Trump's legal team is weighing calling Republican lawmakers as witnesses at the Jan 6 federal trial that Jack Smith has brought that's supposed to start March 4th, the day before Super Tuesday, in front of Judge Tanya Chutkan in Washington, D.C. It's coming out now. It was reported in the news that Donald Trump is considering putting Republican members of Congress on the stand on trial in his defense. He wants to ask the lawmakers who cast votes objecting to the certification of Biden's win, such as Ted Cruz, Josh Hawley, remember the guy pumping, his fist during Jan 6 during the riot. He wants to be able to use this as a legal strategy to try and persuade jurors that Trump wasn't an outlier when he was pushing this election fraud claim. He's saying he represented a wide view of, this widespread view within his party that somehow, he won this election, and he's going to try to call them on, put them on the stand. And, look, just going back, he needed them to basically trigger a debate on the floor as to who the lawful winner was in order to try and stop the counting of the electoral votes by Mike Pence. And so he enlisted these senators and members of Congress to try and create this controversy. He's the one who's spreading the election lies. He's the one, despite every court case that has been brought to him, that he has brought trying to say there was fraud in the election, every court case he has lost because there is no fraud. His own Department of Justice under Bill Barr, and then later under acting Attorney General Rich Rosen and Jeffrey Donahue, they all said there is no fraud that would warrant overturning the election, stopping the certification. Despite all of that, he still wouldn't listen. He still pushed these lies and tried to get the senators and members of Congress to debate this on the floor and try to stop the certification. He needed them to do this. And of course, they went along with him dutifully, the way all his MAGA follower people do for some strange reason. But it'll be interesting to see if he does try to call them. Number one, will it be objected to from prosecutors? Will it be objected to from the senators and legislators themselves? Will the judge approve this? Is this relevant, right? In terms of relevant evidence, is it admissible and relevant to his trial? Because you can't just put anyone on for any reason. It has to be relevant. And so what are the issues that the judge will weigh? One thing to think about is, will, for example, Ted Cruz or any of the other senators or members of Congress agree to testify? They could say, sorry, there's the separation of powers and the speech or debate clause in the Constitution. And, therefore, you can't make me testify to what my deliberative process was, my thought process, what I did on the House floor, what I did that day. None of that might be able to come in if they assert that. The other thing, though, is the events leading up to the Jan 6 potentially could be fair game for being able to call them as witnesses, because that doesn't necessarily have to do with speech or debate on the floor or, anything regarding their congressional duties. So there will be a kind of balancing between what had to do with what they were doing on the House floor and what happened before that. But maybe they want to testify. Maybe they want to show that they're loyal to Trump. And, maybe Trump wants to be able to show that the political environment he was in, at the time, he had good faith reason to object. And he saw anomalies and they saw anomalies. And he wasn't an outlier, that these were people who all felt the same way. So it'll be very interesting to see whether or not the judge will allow this, because I'm not really sure how it's relevant what other people thought. It really has to do with what Trump did. But, they were there on January 6th, some of them. And so they're actually witnesses to the events of January 6th and to the insurrection. So in that regard, perhaps they could actually be called as witnesses because they're eyewitnesses to some of the events. So it'll just be interesting to see whether or not they want to to testify on behalf of Donald Trump. And this strategy, by the way, to have senators, to enlist fellow senators and others to delay the certification, this was described by a Trump strategist. His name was Peter Navarro, the guy who was just convicted for defying a congressional subpoena to testify on Jan 6. By the way, he was just convicted of that. He coined this strategy as the Green Bay sweep. So that's the strategy that Trump is going to put on trial as his defense, and it'll be interesting to see whether he will be able to do that. The trial is set for March 4th. And that's going to be in Washington, D.C., so stay tuned. And just again, to remind everybody what the speech and debate clause is, it's Article 1, Section 6, Clause 1. It protects members of Congress from lawsuits over legislative speech. And it's so that they don't have to worry that anything they say in the course of legislative activities, whether that will implicate them in a lawsuit, or whether that could require them to testify in court in a matter. So it basically reads, the senators and representatives shall receive a compensation for their services to be ascertained by law and paid out of the Treasury of the United States. They shall, in all cases, except treason, felony, and breach of the peace, be privileged from arrest during their attendance at the session of their respective houses, and in going to and returning from the same, and for any speech or debate in either house, they shall not be questioned in any other place. So that's been widely defined by the Supreme Court. It applies to not just them, but their staffers, and anything that can be in any way construed as part of their job. That is what is really at the heart of the speech and debate clause. But your guess and my guess is anybody's guess in terms of who's going to do what, because it's unclear, right? Whether or not the senators who remain loyal to the MAGA right and to Donald Trump, whether they will want to help him, whether they'll want to use that, if some of them are up for re-election, as a platform to get free legal coverage. So we'll see what they say. Stay tuned. I'm Karen Friedman Agnifilo from Legal AF, and join me every Wednesday and Saturday with Michael Popak and Ben Meiselas at 8 o'clock Eastern.
Hey, Meidas Mighty, love this report? Continue the conversation by following us on Instagram at MeidasTouch to keep up with the most important news of the day. What are you waiting for? Follow us now.